Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exo-terra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exo-terra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exo-terra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exo-terra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exo-terra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Zac here, as always, with my good bud Clint. How you doing, dude?
I am fantastic, my friend. How about you?
I'm okay.
You're surviving, right? Could be worse surviving right now.
Yeah. I'll get this out of the way now. Probably shouldn't have worded it that way, but my town, Wheeling, West Virginia, has actually been making national news for reasons that we don't want to make national news. We had a legit flash flood hit the Wheeling Creek watershed, which is the watershed I live on. My dad has a house on Wheeling Creek, and we had this thunderstorm move through. Didn't seem like much, but the rain was incredibly localized, and we lost power at my house, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So we went over to my dad's house, and I'm sitting on the couch, scrolling social media, and I'm seeing streams and houses and cars and sheds being floating down the river, and was kind of like, what the hell? And I thought, that dumps right behind our house that I'm in right now, my dad's house. So I got up at about 10 o'clock at night and went out, and the creek had risen about 4.5 feet in maybe 30 minutes. And I'm an aquatic biologist. Like, I've been around rivers and streams my entire life. I obviously walked that stream. I have never seen a body of water rise as fast as Wheeling Creek did. So I'm out there with my dad and wife and son and stepmom, and we're like picking up furniture and moving it. And there's sheds and cars and everything going down the creek, which was nuts. And unfortunately, it's very sad. Handful of people have passed away from the flood, so I'm thinking of them, and I'm thinking of my community, and we'll get better with time. But man, it's been a rough 48 hours. So
it's been wild. We've got a lot of the same rain that you got, and it's, to my knowledge, there's not been any loss of life, but we're talking flooding in areas that we never see flooding.
Yeah,
I mean, like, it's coming up into the doors in Target. Yeah. It's places you just don't ever expect that kind of thing to happen. On our local, it's called Evansville Watch. I'm guessing most cities have something where they listen to the police scanners and all that and update what's going on.
Wheeling above ground.
Corey, our nursery individual, was on Evansville Watch because she's outside in her, rain boots to her knees, yellow rain jacket, and pulling her pup on a sled through the water because, it's just the streets where there's a guy on a kayak. It's just all this. It's crazy. And it's pouring out here again right now. So it's like, my basement, when I say flooded, there's like a thin carpet in the playroom for the kids downstairs. And it was enough. We had to pull everything. It starts seeping in, whenever it gets that saturated. So down there with a carpet shampooer sucking all the water out of it. And it wasn't the best of times.
Well, so we ended up at my dad's and he lives a mile away from me. So I'm up on a hill. He's down on the floodplain because on the Saturday, day before Father's Day, the power went out at the end of the storm. And I, of course, have incubators, 100 plus eggs in my incubators. We do not have a generator. And now I did what a lot of people do. I had the initial, like, oh God, panic. They'll get the electricity back on, though. No, they can handle it. Don't open the incubators, blah, blah, blah. We talked about this. And then I went over to Dad's. And because of what was happening that we didn't know was happening, AEP, our electric company, basically set out a message saying, like, we're not going to get to this for days. So I got home after doing all that work with Dad, and I'm running around my house, no electricity on, with a temp gun, zapping every freaking square inch, trying to see where is the house holding at 75, 77 degrees, because false water, like the temperate colubrids, I get it. They're fine. You know, I had my first clutch of musaranas ever the day before. And if they drop below into the low 70s, we got problems. False water cobras, I've done experiments with them. No, when they're held at 73 degrees for 4 days, they're dead. So I'm running around, found that my son's bedroom on top of a bookcase was 77. I was like, that's perfect. So I gently move all the eggs into bins, put the bins up on top of the bookcase. Got done with that at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Went to sleep. I woke up and Father's Day, and distinctly remember waking up thinking, man, I need a blanket. It's cold. And then immediately follow with, son of a. And so I got up and ran up and started zapping the corner, and it was a balmy 70 degrees. And I was like, okay, going to school. But every way to West Liberty University has been washed out. So we got a grand experiment. I normally wouldn't do this, but I knew I wasn't going to have electricity for days. I knew we're going to IHS, so I only had like 2.5 days this week. We're recording this. I think you fly out tomorrow. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I fly out the next day. And I normally wouldn't do this, but I was like, screw it. They're all going to school because we got storms going. We're leaving on vacation after this. I want a generator. So put dots on all the eggs, packed them with sphagnum moss, did a whole lot of praying, and drove to West Liberty. And now my incubators are fine. So I've done this in the past and didn't lose anything. But we shall see. So the grand experiment is, can you move eggs halfway through incubation and still get them to hatch? Because I drove them about 35 minutes from here. I'm thinking it'll be fine. I'm just a little bit worried about kinking and everything with them dropping as low as they did. But, you know, it is what it is. Emergencies call for that. So after hearing it's going to be days before the electricity comes on, Father's Day, my wife and I are outside trying to get this generator to work. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Colin's inside. That's my son. I go inside to kind of decompress, because we all know what it's like when you're trying to get something to work and it's not. And I look up and I'm like, why is that light on? The generator's not working. What the hell's going on? And then I turn around and was like, wait a minute. The light's on, which means we got power. So I was like, son of. So anyway, it wasn't 5 days. Turns out it was about 20 hours. So we'll see. But that is the grand experiment this summer. And every egg here on is going up there. All the gravid girls here at the house are heading to school while we're at IHS. So
nice.
Yeah, it's been an insane 72 hours.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, luckily I've not had to deal with any major issues through these storms as far as everything out here, but it's I've certainly had to do it. Well, I did it over the winter. And that was a big panic mode. For me, it's, prepping to be gone this week. We've got, as far as egg collection and things hatching and all that, we've got tons that are starting to hatch. Everything's covered. Steve's back. Corey, of course, is back there. They've got all that covered. The only thing that I wish I was here, I am all but certain that those barons are going to be dropping while I'm gone, which means, first time we've had those, and it's the, species that we're a little cautious on how we work with. And Steve is going to obviously be the one handling those. And so it's like, I wish I'd have been, be present whenever that's happening. So, but all in, I mean, I can't complain too much with what's happening out here. Things are moving fast. I think I mentioned we have a short gap between recordings, so everyone knows. So if we say something that we just said on the last episode, forgive us. Because I think I may have mentioned I just picked up another trailer and we're redoing our racks and things like that. I thought so. So that's kind of what I've been working on, and kind of under the gun now to get the racks completed, because Ox has a show here in Indiana. Sunday. And so, after today, I'll be gone, but trying to make sure that we have things the way that we want them for that to take place. Really, other than that, I don't think there's too much as far as news from Metazotics. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of some cool things that, we're both actually a part of that we'll talk later in the episode on, that I'm certainly excited about. This will be a small little colubrid fest type update. On the official Colubrid Fest fan page on Facebook. Just today, I posted what for me is the most updated list that I have or am aware of on rear fang venomous that are allowed in Indiana, no permit necessary. So if you're a potential vendor, you might want to hop on, take a look at that list. It's got everything that I'm sure there are more, but this is what I personally have documentation from DNR saying these are okay. So that's the list that I personally have compiled from different interactions with Indiana DNR. So check that out. That's cool. That's probably all my updates, man. It's, had a good Father's Day, had a great time with kids, hung out. So that's about it for me, buddy.
Yeah. Only one that I alluded to it there. I was cleaning here at the house and getting ready. I've been just pounding the animals a little bit more than normal for the summer because we're going to go into a little bit of a fast because I got IHS and then that bleeds straight into my family vacation. So I'm flying to Raleigh, North Carolina, not West Virginia, getting in a rental car with Colin, and we're driving to the Outer Banks from, IHS. That's our travel. So totally fine, not worried about, not feeding the snakes for a little bit. I have somebody that works with me that's going to check in on them while I'm gone. So please don't think I'm starving my animals, but most of the adults, they're going to go a little while. So I was really cleaning cages, like way more than normal. And I just, I don't know why. Something was just telling me you need to go down and check everything you thought that was gravid just to be safe. And so I didn't think my Dade County Brooks eye went. Sure enough, because I have a separate rack that I put everybody in and pull the tub. There's the freaking eggs. A little bit dried out, just a tiny bit dried out. I was like, all right, sweet. And then I'm standing there because I'm like, all right, this is working. And then it just starts pinging in my brain. You thought that moosey was kind of large. And I had that moment that we all live for when you've achieved something that you've been trying for. And it was even better because I wasn't ready for it. And it was kind of that lackadaisical, I should check that sheet. Holy shit. Like, there they are kind of thing. So Kathy's like, what is going on down there? Because apparently I just have full-blown conversations with the universe. I was like, I don't know who the hell I thought I was talking to. She was like, you were talking to a lot of people. There was a lot of cackling. I don't understand. Thought you were losing your mind down there. I was like, I've tried to do this since 2018. So anyway, because musaranos are like king snakes, orders of magnitude more king snakey. Like the females, like a king snake, she bites the male or he bites the female, and you can like pull them off. Ha ha ha. Musaranos bite each other, dude. It's on. And when you pull them off, if they decide to bite you, you're now envenomated. So it's not like, So I was super stoked about those eggs, and there were 6 that were laid, 4 were fertile. 1 could have been fertile, but it was a little funky, and I was like, I'm not risking it. And then one was a very obvious slug. So that was that. And then the other thing, which is, I'll give this update now. I never know when to talk about the Iowa research updates funded by the money from Colubrid Fest and the Conservation Corps. So we'll just do that now. Today is an extremely cool day. Probably for me, there's been like 3 days that were the best. The day that I got all the graduate students agreed and we actually had a team. And then there was the day we put the drift fences in. That was a pretty big day because we actually got a snake, put a pit tag in. It was like it was happening. And then today, update is we have hognose snakes on the way to the vet because the transmitters came in. All the transmitters were purchased with the auction money. So there wasn't a penny of that came from anything but the auction money from Colubrid Fest. And they are going to be implanted tomorrow. And then they're going to be back on the prairie. And we are going to be gathering telemetry data from hognose snakes with transmitters where the funds came from Colubrid Fest on Wednesday or Thursday, which that was like, okay, full circle. You know, we said we were going to do it, and now we're doing it. So we're doing the snake community stuff, and now we're doing the telemetry stuff. And my grad student page and the team out there, Don, Jim, and Dr. Josh, I have nothing but good things to say because they're coordinating it on the ground. I'm just Mr. Moneybags that buys things. So I was pretty stoked and pumped that that's actually happening. So
it's really cool.
Those of you who contributed to that, I'm thinking about probably when they get back to school, we won't bring them on for a whole episode, but we'll definitely bring them on for part of an episode, kind of like what we did with Rare Genetics, and just have them talk about their experience, because I think it's important that y'all hear that we're not only helping snakes, but like there are future herpetologists that are receiving their education and their scientific, training resultant of you, if you contributed in any way, and herpetoculture, which is pretty much what we're all about here. So that is my kind of field update and collection update. And a lot has happened in, I think, 5 days. I don't even think it's been a week since we did this. So it's been a very crazy period of time here. Yeah. But that is my update. So I guess we can move on to the market update or the science update, whichever one you want to do first.
Go ahead and roll the science. Let's do it first.
So, science update brought to you today by Rare Genetics Inc. As always, get those sheds to Ben and Kayla. They're doing great things, and we're pretty proud of this relationship that we have going with them. And it's a great way for the colubrid snake keeping community to actually kind of push the keeping element forward. I also want you all to remember, if you want your snakes sexed, they can do that too. So even if you're a pet keeper, you don't necessarily need to know what morph you have to guarantee your future customers. You just want to know if you got a boy or a girl and you don't have somebody to probe. $25, I think. It's not overly expensive, and you can have that knowledge. Okay. All right. Science update. I've been doing books. We started off doing journal articles, and I've been doing a couple journal, but the books seem to get the most traction. And I'm just going to let everybody know, it warms my nerdy heart when somebody sends me a message saying, hey, I bought the Fitch book. I'm pretty sure that Colubrid and Colubrid Radio is the main reason a snake community by Fitch has been purchased and sold out on Amazon. Now, I think they had a whopping 8 copies to begin with, but I don't care. You can't get one now. So with that in mind, I'm going to share with you all what I feel is a massively underappreciated book. And if you are anywhere on planet Earth and you keep North American snakes, so if you are in North America and you like to go herping and keep North American snakes, if you're just interested in North American snakes, let me define this. Snakes of the United States and Canada specifically. Carl Erst and Evelyn Erst's, here it is, Snakes of the United States and Canada. This is a fantastic book. Now, this one's pretty big. All righty. It's out of print now. And what's really interesting about this particular book is I remember when it was published, and I remember seeing it pop across. It actually popped across Amazon for me about a decade ago, a little bit over a decade ago. And it was one of those suggested by this. And it was all of these books that are put out by the Smithsonian Institution, the snakes of, frogs of, turtles of, salamanders of the United States and Canada. I buy them all because they're always done by a distinguished expert in the field. They have really thorough species accounts. And if you read the species accounts, you're going to learn up until the year that the book was published, the taxonomy of the snake, You're going to learn, or whatever it is, in this case, snakes. You're going to learn about the ecology of the snake. You're going to learn about the distinguishing characteristics of the snake, how to identify the snake, conservation status of the snake, what it's related to. And if you're a natural history ecology nerd, it's written in an extremely digestible way. And what's cool about this one is it has every single one. If you want to get the lowdown on bears, rat snakes, this has a beautiful chapter on bears, rat snakes, because I remember reading it a couple years ago when we were thinking about doing a bears, rat snake enclosure. If you want to learn about Tantilla, the black-headed snakes, which hardly anybody pays any attention to, but are extremely cool animals, this book has that for you. So what Ernst and Ernst did, this is a husband-wife team. Carl Ernst has been around for quite some time, well-known herpetologist, is they basically just did an enormous literature search and condensed it all down for you, the potential reader. The species accounts are where I started for the hognose snake book. I basically grabbed every single reference from each of the heterodon references and went from there. And I like this book so much that this is one where if I see it for $50 or less, I buy it. So I have a copy of it here and I have a copy of it at school. Now, the copy at school has walked off with a student, and I will hunt that student down one day, and hopefully they will be alive when that process is over, because that's how much I like this book. You don't take my snakes of the United States and Canada away from me, okay? So just to kind of give you an idea, this is, oh, look at that. Magically, I opened to the Eastern hognose snake. Yeah. You kind of see, nice range map, and like, double columned, and just for the Eastern hognose snake, this is heterodon. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of double column text with only 3 pictures. So it's thorough, guys. So if you can get your hands on that one, you trust my recommendations up to this point. I can't recommend it enough. That's a solid book. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got. Ernst and Ernst, Snakes of the United States and Canada.
Very cool. I know people certainly love the book reviews. I mean, those have been a hit. And it's caused me to buy some. So I mean,
there you go.
Doing the good work, my friend.
Thanks.
All right, I'll jump into the market update. Market update, as always, is brought to you by the Show Me Reptiles Show and Show Me Marketplace. Mickey and his team, as we always say, put on a good show. If you are out and about and looking for a reptile expo, there's bound to be one somewhere near you. So please check it out. Support those that support us, and by us, of course, we mean the colubrid community. What I'm going to go into with today's market update is this is going to be more of an advice segment because it's, again, just a few days since the last time that we recorded. And what we're running into now, what we're seeing is the time of year where we have the explosion of hatching, babies. Whether it's, if you have 2 clutches for your entire year or you've got thousands, I mean, this is whenever it starts happening. And for those who do have quite a few babies that, they're expecting, I want to help as far as, I guess I want to share our system and our process from hatch to posted for sale and what that looks like to keep you in line and to keep things moving for you. Because at this point, especially right now, you will be, when things hatch, the quicker that they are available, you're going to be what we call the early arriver. Meaning there's going to be certain species that you are one of the first to have available. There's going to be other species by the time that yours are ready. There's several of them already offered, and that's okay too. They're going to all have their part, and we handle those things a little differently. But you can capitalize on your early arrival placement if you do things a certain way. So what we do, we have the animals hatch out, obviously. We make sure they go through their first shed. Depending on the species, a lot of times we leave the entire clutch together for that first 7 to 10 days until they go through their shed. And then we separate by sex. Everybody gets their individual ID cards and set up, in their individual tubs. You need to give yourself a baseline on when do I consider this species ready? And for some species, that can be they need 10 meals. For a lot of colubrid species, in my experience, 3 consecutive meals, you're probably pretty good. You're ready to at least begin the process of putting them on the market. Even if you say, you know what, I want 5 before I ship them out. If you've got 3 consecutive, you can probably start doing some of these other steps to get things out and get them about. And you can just tell any potential buyers, we got 1 more week, 1 more feeding, and then I think we're good to ship. So for us, if we're at 3 or some, we may be at 5, whatever the species. Hopefully you're keeping track, whether that is a dot on a lid or on an index card or, whatever your system is, keeping track. What we do is after each feeding, any animal that has reached the mark on how many feedings it needs, we turn our cards a certain way. That's our signal that this one's ready. It's actually Corey turns the card a certain way, and that's her signal to me. This animal is ready to have its picture taken and to be posted. So I go through and I have 2 days a week that I have scheduled. They're on my to-do list on these 2 particular days, take pictures. And if I fall behind on this with us, it gets bad because I may be then looking at 90 pictures in a day, 90 different snakes to take pictures of, and taking 90 baby colubrid pictures. You see this beard here. I'm 24 years old, and that's what taking baby colubrid pictures does to you. So it's better if you stay on top of that because, again, when you get behind, you're then delaying even further out on getting your animals pictured, getting your animals posted. So try to set yourself that routine, that whether it's once a week, twice a week, whatever your system is. And so the moment that they have passed that threshold, we're getting that picture taken. We're getting an individual, and I always recommend individual photographs whenever possible because let's face it, when you're looking for an animal, you want to see what it looks like. So does everybody else. So get that taken, and then don't sit on it. Whether you're working on your laptop while watching TV or whatever, if you have a website, get it on your website. I always start there because I like having that funnel point. If you're using the Show Me Marketplace or Morph Market or any other platform, get it posted. Because again, right now, this point in time, if you have anything that becomes available really within the next 6 weeks starts pushing it, but really within the next 4 weeks, anything new, any 2025 babies that become ready, you will slide in as an early arrival and be one of the first to have them posted and for sale. And so you're more likely to be able to move some quicker because there is a pent-up demand, a pent-up want from a group that hasn't been able to see anything really new in probably the past 4 months. So get in, do it early, make it happen, be successful. I'm wishing you the best on that. That's what I've got for the market today.
All right, cool. Okay. Are we going to introduce what we're doing today?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump into that. So what we decided to do is, we had our controversial episode. It was so much fun. That was a blast. And we'll probably do something like that again. But what we wanted was we kind of liked having random topics thrown at us just to discuss. And so this is going to be, an episode of randoms, meaning they're not really going along. What we did was Max threw out to the Patreon group and asked, what are some things you would like the guys to chat about? And, we've got ideas from them, and that's what we're going to do. So through this episode, Max is just going to pretty much throw a topic, and maybe we agree on it, maybe we don't. We haven't really discussed any of that. This isn't, a controversial episode.
No,
this is just a multi-topic episode, and, I think it might be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So,
and we also are doing this, full disclosure, because we were going to do a much more involved episode today, but Wheeling got flooded. I didn't have time to prepare what we wanted to prepare.
Yeah, the episode we had planned, we're not going to really say what yet, but it was going to have kind of, I don't want to call it a science backing, but it's going to be opinions, but laid out in a scientific way, if we want to say it that way. So, you know, and it's going to be good, and we're still going to do it.
We're totally doing it.
Got pinched for time on it.
Yep.
So.
Okay. All right. So, we may or may not know the order. Tech Wizard Max, throw up an idea, and obviously we will say this for the people that aren't watching on YouTube. So we have, all right. So first topic, which is I don't know if it's a controversial topic. I just know a lot of people want to know. And that's inbreeding. What are the impacts? Is it okay? Why do it? Just a general topic on inbreeding. And before we go any further, we have every intention of bringing Miss Dr. Morell on from RGI, and Ben will be talking at Colubrid Fest, which I've already said, and hopefully he listens because it's the second time I've said that, but I haven't told him yet. So anyway, yeah. So but inbreeding. So you want me to start? You want to start? I don't care to start.
Well, I do want to say this segment is obviously brought to you by ReptiChip.
Oh yeah,
our topic segment is always brought to you by ReptiChip, who makes a fantastic product. As you guys know, I love using it for the animals. Zac loves using it for incubation. So get out, get you some ReptiChip, whether that's the ReptiChip, whether that's ReptiEarth, or anything in between, because they've got some nice stuff. I also want to point out that we mean no offense to anybody in West Virginia on this topic of inbreeding. We figure I'm just messing with it. It's too easy. Easy.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, when we're talking about inbreeding, there's really two major points, I guess, common in the reptile industry on when inbreeding is mentioned. And it's one, whenever you are attempting to line breed for either a look or a specific gene, a new gene usually. But so that's the one. That's really where I think the science piece is going to come in. But I don't even think that's where the most common inbreeding occurs in the reptile community. It's much more common than individuals think. And it's not because someone is going for a particular look or a particular gene. It's how often when you purchase snakes do you purchase a pair?
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that.
And you're purchasing a pair from the same breeder, the same clutch, and it's extremely common. And I mean, that's where I think the bulk of reptile inbreeding takes place, is due to the convenience of being able to purchase two at the same time from the same person.
I remember in 2016, I would, prior to 16, when Zoosci happened and I had to buy all the animals, all the way back when I was doing this, just 20-something guy. I was a keeper. Breeding was not part of the equation for me. I would buy one of this, one of that, one of this, one of that. Noah's Ark kind of deal. And that was fine. But I knew when I was establishing the Zoo Science collection, I wanted the capacity to produce our own snakes, because we would need to do that for building sample sizes and all that kind of jazz. And I distinctly remember when I was sitting on my couch going through fauna at the time, and it was like, how in the hell are they breeding enough to give out pairs? Like, my biologist brain was like, do these people have like 4.4 animals and they know the genes? They wouldn't possibly be giving out siblings. And then finally I messaged a guy and was like, what's the deal with pairs? And the reply I got was like, what are you talking about? Like, do you have multiple genetic lineages? I mean, I wasn't even using the herp. I was nerding this out. And he was like, no, I give you like a brother and a sister. And at the time I was like, what the, how, what, huh? Like, it was, this is a normal practice. Now, since then, I've learned a lot. I don't want you to interpret me validating that. I absolutely will always stand on outcross if possible. But inbreeding is complicated when it comes to reptiles and amphibians. And so I can do a little bit of science on this. there's a whole field of science called conservation genetics. And in conservation genetics, what you do is you're studying imperiled populations. So populations that are perceived to be endangered. And one of the kind of ways that you can determine if a population is endangered is you can go in and figure out an inbreeding coefficient. And so basically look at how heterogeneous the gene pool is. What's been interesting with reptiles and amphibians is a lot of times what's thought to be the control population, what's thought to be like this really diverse genetic population, people go in and look for these, biometrics, and they find out that, oh, well, that's pretty inbred. And then the opposite happens as well. Things that are perceived to be very inbred can be outcrossed extensively. So with herps, I'm just going to let you know from the science point of view, it's not figured out yet. Because I have always asked this question: what is an ethical and what is a okay inbreeding depression? Like, at what point are you okay with inbreeding and you're not impacting the population beyond a certain extent? And my science answer to this is there is no way in hell we can come up with a one size fits all answer to this. I think the ecology and the natural history of the snake and their life history, like there's a lot that goes into how inbred a population of snakes can be, because we've got things like boas and bothrops, lanceheads and pit vipers that are off the coast of China, lanceheads off the coast of South America, boas off the Central American mainland that we know that have been intensively studied. Like, that might have been a founder event of like 5 animals. And now it's a freaking species and it's surviving out in the wild. But then you look at something like an indigo snake, and indigo snakes don't do well with inbreeding. And there's evidence that they were never really that inbred. And the reason is indigo snakes are out moving around a bunch. Bothrops are sit and wait predators. So their ecology gets pulled into this. So I don't think you can just broad brush it. And it's also, and then I'll stop my little rant here, I think it's like unrealistic to think that in human care, we're going to start with a lot of genetic diversity. Because if you really want to have that, you need to start with like 100.100, like 100 males, 100 females. And that's just not going to happen. And human care captivity is not the wild. It's different. So there's probably a fair amount of inbreeding, even in things we don't think are inbred.
And I'll tell you, I know that coxeye, Thai bamboo rat snakes. So until Matt Most brought in new blood, I want to say that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago that he brought in some new coxeye. Prior to that, all coxeye in the U.S., if not in the hobby as a whole, I'm pretty sure the hobby as a whole, came from 6 specimens collected by Klaus before that. And I don't even know what the sex ratio was. I can't even say it was a 3-3. Matt may know. But I mean, and you see how many coxeye there are, out there now, and that all, we're descended from that very, very small, gene pool. So that you pointing out that their ecology would make a big difference. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And that really comes to play because, I mean, in my experience with so many different species, and again, it's always, you buy them by the pairs, you buy them by the trio or whatnot, and you try to go get others, but you don't always succeed in that, or it just gets away from you and you just never do it. The amount of any kind of deformities or obvious signs of inbreeding issues haven't necessarily been there, for me. There are things where, like, we know lines of leucistic animals that have bug eyes, but it's is that tied into an inbreeding piece, or is that tied into that leucistic gene, causing, because why is it so often in the Lucies, but not in the normals that, maybe getting inbred too? Now I think there may be times where we probably do see effects of inbreeding, but don't realize that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
where we'll have some kinked animals and we blame it on incubation, we blame it on something else. But if you breed those animals this year, there's no kinks. Next year, there's kinks. The year after, there aren't kinks. Was that an inbreeding problem? Was that not? But I also think that there are probably some inbreeding issues that maybe you never see with the naked eye. Whether that's, some
100%.
genial issue that,
Yep.
kills the snake in 4 years, enlarged hearts, well, whatever, that probably come through that, then we go to it happens, right? How often do we say
That's
that in
our
the reptile
validation.
community? Yeah. When a reptile dies, yeah, it happens, but something caused it, and it could very well be that. So it's like, this one's difficult for me as someone who's, I'm not the science guy. This is just lots of babies over the years and observations. I feel that, and you please correct me here, I feel that it's not as, let's call it, big of an issue, okay, or as detrimental in reptiles as in mammals.
There's an element of truth to that.
Okay.
Human primates, apes, I don't know if it extends to monkeys. We're like the one group of animals that evolved a mechanism where we look at our sister or our brother and don't go, they're hot. Yeah. And this, like, all the other, like, lots of animals, there's even kin selection where they can recognize that's my sibling. They just don't care. The drive to reproduce and keep the population going such that, they're just going to move forward. So for our snakes, we know there is not a heterogenic maximization mechanism, which basically means that with the breeding success, it's trying to promote that. Now, interestingly, there was a time in human society where we wanted to inbreed to keep the line pure, and anybody that watched Game of Thrones or
royals,
royals and things like that, and they ended up with an inbreeding depression and all that kind of good stuff. You brought up a very valid point, though, which is the thing I think about all the time. We are so fixated on what the animal looks like and what is going on the outside. The thing I cannot get past with willfully inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding is that all these gene complexes that we're talking about, they're making a tremendous amount of enzymes and biological molecules. And like, if you don't make the right enzyme, your brain doesn't work. So you might look perfect, but your brain isn't functioning properly. And then that is what leads to that snake dying when it's 4 years old, or your liver isn't working right, or your pancreas isn't working right, or, and so when we have a depressed genome, you get those issues, and we will never see that. We won't look at that unless you're going in there, pulling out DNA yourself and looking to see what genes are turned on. We call that upregulated in certain scenarios at certain ages. And that's the thing that I often wonder, does this thing get so depressed genetically that it looks great, but it's digesting its food at 20% capacity? It can afford to do that when it's highly metabolic as a baby, and then it reaches adulthood, and now it can't, and it dies. And I've ran into some inbred animals, black-tailed freaking Crebos, man. I got a pair of black-tailed Crebos that were adults for the school. They were perfect, except for the guy, when he was packing up the female, he crunched her, and it was crazy. We got to the hotel, and I'm like there with a coffee strainer down her trachea, trying to keep her alive, and she's hacking up blood clots.
Jeez.
I was like, what the hell? She died within 24 hours, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Male was perfect. That was my initiation into black-tailed Crebos. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to get a group for the school. And I was naive. I bought a couple more. They were subadults because everybody says, grow them up yourself. Don't buy adults. In retrospect, I wish I would have bought adults because Dre Markin, when they get inbred, they're these short, stubby, crazy-looking snakes that end up getting a bunch of spinal deformities. It's a snake that should max out at 7 feet. and I had 2 that maxed out at 4, but they weighed almost as much as a 7-footer. It was insane. They were like turds that could move. And that was when I was like, okay, started talking to people, found out that the people that I had bought these things from, like, they had just got a pair initially and kept holdbacks and just kept inbreeding.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a snake, I can tell you, can't handle it. And the dry market people of the world, they'll talk about this as well. The indigo sub community of keepers talk about inbreeding is a big deal with them. There's this absolutely crazy, ludicrous, idiotic idea to mix Texas indigo DNA in with Eastern indigo DNA. Texas indigos are actually a Crebo. They're not even an indigo. So 2 completely different species, but is what it is. So yeah. So some species more susceptible than others.
I think for me, my final statement on this as a breeder, and because different breeders I think are going to have a different stance, and I think at times it has to be a bit of a gray area because there's been inbreeding in just about every, to your point, that you don't have this species unless it's been inbred along the line somewhere. So I guess what I'll do is I'll say, here's how, when I'm questioned on this, are your pairs related? And if they are, yes or no, depending on what it is, I will then have some newcomers to the hobby ask me if, a brother and sister of breeding them are going to be a problem. And my honest answer is typically, in most cases with reptiles, it's not, because it's something that, again, happens very, very frequently in the hobby. But I like to take it a step further and tell them whether or not the babies that I have available, were produced by related animals or not. Because I think, then you've got a little bit more of an informed decision where, okay, yeah, my breeding pair were siblings or mother to son or, whatever it was. Or my breeding pair is unrelated as what I know, got them from 2 completely different sources, whatever. And so to my knowledge, this sibling pair, it's a first generation relation and not, that it's been line bred down. So as a breeder, I would make sure that you're honest if they're related, if they're not related. And I think that the best that anyone can hope for is for you to tell that. And then if you can tell whether or not the parents that produced them were related,
sure.
I think you're going about as far as you can as a breeder to make sure that everyone's informed.
This is why if you have morphs, and if you have a simple homozygous gene, just make some hets every now and then with a completely different snake, and then breed het to het to get your morph out of there. And if you do this in a stylized way, you are not getting rid of the inbreeding issue. I do not want you to think like that magically makes the inbreeding going away, because if you're getting that phenotype over and over and over again, and it's only popped up once in the hobby. Lavender false water cobras are a great example of this. To my knowledge, they popped up in Italy in 2014 from 1 breeding. But since they've gotten here to the States, I know a lot of people have bred their lavenders to what we assume to be an unrelated snake. You get the hets, then you do het to het. You're kind of maximizing some genetic diversity in that scenario. And if you just every now and then do that, you do the outcross and then you get back into it. A lot of people, I guess, don't like hets. I think it's kind of cool to have the hets. Scientifically, from a breeding program's point of view, you're doing it right. But when you just get that double recessive and you do, in the case of lavenders, lavender to lavender and get more lavenders, which you then do lavender to lavender, and then you get more lavenders, and then you do lavender to lavender to get more lavenders, you're not doing that project or phenotype any good. And there are people that will disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. But I've said it at least 3 to 4 times on here so far. I like the lavenders are pretty, but the dumbest false water cobras I've ever owned were lavender. And I see look at false water cobras every day of my life that I am in this house or at work, and I can see already there's like some phenotypic things going on with the labs where at least the males just got this kind of stocky look, and it reminds me, I'm not saying it is, I'm not, I got vibes that there's definitely some inbreeding depression going on with those animals right now. Are there great big massive perfect looking labs? Yes. Are there stocky little ones? Yep. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to make lavenders anymore. I don't. But then I thought I am, because I can make the hets and I can control the hets. So I can breed the male that I am sharing with another individual to all my outcrossed females, and then just saturate the market, which I've already kind of done, with heterozygotes, which I think are pretty cool, from different moms. And, so maybe just think about that side of the breeding and not just being so goal oriented, so I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it.
Works for me.
All right.
Good. We feel like we hit this one hard enough?
I do.
All right, Max, hit us with the next one, buddy.
Okay.
Dream herping spots.
Where do we want to go herping? So this is obviously in response to, we are now doing these herping trips and bringing you along to live vicariously through us. Obviously, the herping spot thing, I'm going to say that we're going to limit it. Why don't we give 2 answers, not elaborate too much, but just an international dream spot and a spot in the States.
Okay.
So I came up with the idea, and now I'm going to put you on the spot, which
pick
your winner.
All right. I'll say, as far as the U.S., hands down, it's Arizona.
Arizona. Okay.
Arizona. I think that there's the type of diversity there is great. And I think that now, where in Arizona, that I'm not smart enough to know that. That's where I would ask others. But it's not only is there going to be a lot to see, but the species there are going to be unlike anything I'm accustomed to.
Yeah.
So different that's would be really, really cool for me. So I definitely want, I want an Arizona herping trip. That would be my, in the States.
Yeah. With Arizona
spot.
The 2 places that come to mind, you got the Sonoran Desert around Tucson, which is where you get the great big Serrero cactuses, and it like just looks like a desert. I don't know. And then you got the Chiricahuans and all the other little mountain ranges down near Mexico. And we will be there. We're going to be at IHS in Fort Myers the end of the week. Next year, I think, the 50th anniversary for IHS is at Bob Ashley's place in Chiricahua. So next year we're going, bud.
I'm looking forward to that. And that's something I've wanted for a long time. I mean, anytime I've ever been asked about, where would you like to go look for reptiles in the United States, and it's Arizona. Doesn't mean that's my only one. There's several on the list, but Arizona is probably the top.
Okay. For me in the U.S., this might shock some people a little bit. I've now done California. I've done the desert, been all over the Southeast. That's like second home to me. Midwest now. So I actually have for herping, not for research or nerdy science crap. Just, I'm going to go herping. For me, it is Brownsville, Texas. That is where where the Texas indigos are. And then you get several species of snake that kind of just come up from Mexico across the river, that are more Central American Mexican than North American. Things like Stickophanes, which is a dipsatid. So of course I want to see that. You would love it, Clint. It's a brown snake with brown.
Ooh.
Yes.
Twice as good.
Twice as good. Yes. And then another snake, which is brown, but it looks like Boiga, which is pretty cool. Leptodyra is in there. Cat-eyed snakes are there. And then, of course, I think it's annulata, one of the triangulum, one of the milks. I don't know which one that is. I just know it's a milk snake phenotype. That's pretty cool. Drymobius, speckled racers are down in that part of the world. though I did get to see those in Costa Rica. But the biggie for me is you go out there in the wintertime, you drive around on these back roads, and there's 6 or 7 foot Texas indigos just slithering everywhere. I don't think that you can really beat that. And in Florida, you're not allowed to touch the indigos. And depending on where you are, you're not allowed to touch the Texas indigos. But they were, their threatened status was reduced. So in certain areas, you can pick them up, take pictures. And my favorite Drymarkin that I'm currently keeping, and I'm keeping everything but the Mexicans right now, are my Texas indigos. I don't know why. They're without question the ugliest of all of them, but their personality is fantastic. Nice. And I've really kind of just gotten into like scrubby grassland habitat. I don't know if I would call that part of the world a grassland, but it's definitely a scrub forest. So that's it for me.
Nice.
East Texas.
Well, and I don't blame you there one bit, because if you ask me what my second, it's going to be Texas.
Yeah.
I want to go out and I want to find gray bands. I want to find Trans-Pecos rats. I mean, so.
Yeah, that's my number 2, because I feel like it just needs to happen now. I've been to most of the other places people go. Although I would be much more excited, shocker to everyone, finding a Trans-Pecos rat snake than an Alterna.
I'd be happy with either.
Yeah. Oh, no, I wouldn't be unhappy, but finding a Bodrotophus to me would be every bit as good as finding an Alterna.
So now, as far as a dream herping spot abroad, that's hard. Mm-hmm. That's really, really difficult for me for 2 reasons. One, because there's so many things I would really like to see in the wild. And 2, I'm a geographical idiot. So it's like, this or that. So I'm going to have to answer that in a couple different ways. I mean, Madagascar, how can you not just want to go check everything out there? I mean, because that would be a place, it's not just herping, it's fauna, period. Yeah. You know what I mean? Seeing everything out there would be incredible. And it's like when I think of different things, some of them I'm thinking of what I wouldn't want to. Like, you think of all the diversity in the rainforest, and I'm like, and I'm going to be eaten up alive the whole time I'm there. So it doesn't sound like it would be a good time. But I also think that while I can't narrow this down to a specific region, because again, geographically, I'm just weak, I am so into Asian species.
Yeah.
That I would really like to tour some of the Asian countries, where we're going to see a lot of the diversity and so many of the Asian rat snake species to be able to, I mean, for me, I think a pinnacle moment would be finding a Mandarin rat snake in the wild. Can you imagine that? I mean, how gorgeous those things are. And that's an, Infernalis type moment to see something that gorgeous under a rock, or under a leaflet or whatever. So I think that's probably, if I was only going to have one spot, I can't narrow exactly where it would be, but it would probably be in an Asian country,
that's fair.
Region of some sort.
So this is easy for me. The exact location, don't know, but a wetland in South America where there's a freaking false water cobra. I've of course already started looking into this, and it's probably going to be, there's a town in Paraguay, which is next to Argentina, called Philadelphia. It's not spelled with a PH, it's spelled with an FILA. And I've stalked iNaturalist enough. I've talked to people that have gone to South America, and it just seems like being based out of there in the right time of year. There's a bunch of ditches and wetlands. It's not really a wetland habitat. It's actually a dry scrub forest, but it has wetlands that have false water cobras. So, and normally I would say like North Vietnam for the same reason, because there's just diversity out the wazoo. Mm-hmm. But I've now become so freaking focused on getting this thing on my life list. I don't ever really have imposter syndrome. I've never been that guy. I have a little bit of imposter syndrome being the false water cobra guy and a field biologist who's not seen them in the wild. There's some problems with that. That's just kind of not okay. So, and I don't know anybody else that if you ask, where do you want to go herp? Like Australia.
I think it would be cool.
America, Philadelphia, Paraguay. I'm like, okay.
But it's like everything in Australia wants to kill you.
Oh, I want to go to Australia.
I want to go check that out so bad. But that would definitely be a place where I want an expert with me because I'm not going to be able to identify 75% of what I see. And
I couldn't be your expert because I would run around, I'd get distracted and be like, oh, look at that racer. Oh, it's a mulga snake. Now I'm dead.
Right. And it's, it's funny because to me, Australian venomous species don't always look venomous.
No.
We're used to a certain look, even in, other countries, you can kind of, over there, they all look like colubrids, you know what I mean? And
in the other part of my world, crayfishes, we have more crawdads, but Australia's got the ones that are the size of footballs and look like they crawled out of the Jurassic. So I've oftentimes told people my first trip to Australia will probably be my last, and I'll be figuring out ways to get Kathy, Colin, the dog, and I'll be selling off the reptiles because I'll probably go there and never come back. Like that's a legit, distinct possibility. Knowing me the way that I am, yeah. No, for me, it's absolutely. I'm just going to say Philadelphia, Paraguay. And I don't know if there's another soul on planet Earth that's their dream. Everything I wrote in my book lives either in Philadelphia or like 45 minutes from it. So I just really want to see all those animals in the flesh, in the wild. I want to know what it's like to pick up 100 anasties from the wild because I'm always telling like, oh, they're so chill. I have a feeling a 7-foot wild caught false water cobra is not like my lily up in my office right now.
Right.
So,
nice.
Anyway,
Very cool.
And it will be on, by the way, because I will catch it and probably be. Well, we're just going to leave it at that. So, okay, that's it. That one was a quickie, but still fun.
It was fun. Hit us with the next one, Max. This one, next one is DNR relationship. And what that should look like, I guess, is kind of what we're going to go with here and how the interaction should look. So, Zac, you just had, you already have a relationship, obviously, with the West Virginia DNR because of, when they confiscate, animals, reptiles, they come to the university and you guys handle it from there, take care of them. You just had DNR out there. Was it last week, right?
Yeah, that was last
touring.
Week.
Yeah.
Last week.
Yeah, last week touring. And so, we know that you work with them, especially as your role as a, conservation biologist. I guess what we want to talk about here is you don't have to be a conservation biologist to have a positive relationship with DNR and, understanding what that really should look like. So personally, my interactions with DNR have always been positive. I know that not everyone, and you're going to have the occasional a-hole. I mean, we know that in every profession, but even taking reptiles out of the equation, if a DNR agent has come up whenever I've been fishing, just politely make conversation. They ask me, for my license, show them what we have. They're just doing their job and they go on their way, leave us alone, and wish us luck. So, and again, I know it may not be like that everywhere. So I guess I want to start this by saying you can have a positive relationship with just about any DNR agent if you're just polite, and just, and if you're following the rules.
Yes. That's the biggie.
Yeah. Follow the rules. Be honest, but we can actually do more with DNR if we're willing to have calm, professional discussions. Like the point I think that you made last episode on there's a reason some of these regulations are in place and we may not always agree with them, but there's something has sparked them at some point for them to write the reg. And, but there are some new things that come about. And so one of the things I'll go ahead and share that we're working on now. So Kentucky, which it's funny because neither one of us live in Kentucky, but it's that's the middle for us, right? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Where
Kentucky. That's right. Kentucky is, right in between Indiana and West Virginia, Southern Indiana anyway, where I'm at. And so we got word that the Kentucky DNR are looking at potentially opening up some of their regulations to allow certain rear fang venomous to be kept in Kentucky. Because right now it's just a flat rear fanged are considered venomous, with the exception of hognose, Western hognose.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that unprovoked, right? There was no big meeting or what. The DNR themselves have decided, we should probably ease up on this and let some of these species be kept. And I think that's amazing. And I heard this from a zoo in Kentucky that I work with, and so I reached out. And through that conversation, very pleasant, very fantastic conversation, we, as in CCR, we're assisting in the small ways that we can, Kentucky DNR, in kind of putting together a starter list, is what I would probably call it. A beginning of, here's species that, because Indiana has that kind of white list. Here species that they've researched and deemed that you don't need a permit. They don't deem them venomous. They deem, mildly or whatnot. So we're, I've already compiled, here's what Indiana is okay with. So it's a good start for Kentucky to look at these, but we're also putting together a list of, here are the most commonly kept or requested, in the hobby. And so it's whether you want to approve them or not. Here's the 20 you should probably decide your answer on, because these are the ones you'll be asked for a lot. And they're all for it. I mean, they were extremely grateful that we wanted to jump in and help them with this. And, I think that's how it can be if we just approach things, the right way. It's, and in fact, if you vend the Lexington show, Lexington, Kentucky, there's a very good chance DNR is going to be at that next show. And I'm going to go ahead and I will put myself out there right now and say it's because I invited them. I mean, and I know when DNR comes to a show, people tend to pucker. And I'll be honest, you only pucker if you think you're doing something wrong. So I'm in no way nervous when DNR comes in, because I feel that I am following all the regulations, that I'm aware of, and to the best of my ability. Got all my paperwork in order. But what we decided was, when I said it'd be great if you can come out to that next show, because usually when DNR walks in, it is to check paperwork. It's to make sure things are in line as they should. And that's what they're, supposed to be doing. But how great is it for DNR to come to a reptile show to discuss what they're doing to try to open, more regulations in the state so that more species can be kept within the hobby, of that state. That's awesome. And that's the positive light that I think needs to be looked at. So, didn't mean to hijack this one. We've really got something cool working here that I'm really excited about. And I think that's how it should be.
And I also think it's necessary, and this is the conservation biologist guy saying, that I can put my herper cap on and I can watch FWC do some pretty dumb crap, like kill a boa constrictor and get pretty angry, But please understand that that's an extreme scenario. Like most DNR biologists that are given this job, this is not their primary duty. It's one of about 150 duties they've got to do in a day. And many of them don't have a background in herpetoculture, don't keep reptiles. They have an academic background and they've studied reptiles outside, and they might have a bad taste in their mouth. They might not have a bad taste in their mouth. There's a pretty good chance that when they were a child, what got them to where they are today is a crested gecko or a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko. And a lot of them have that kind of legacy built into them. And as long as you are respectful and forthcoming, you'll be fine. I can flat out tell you, I when I hear, reptile people are shady out of the community side of whether we like it or not, there are shady people among us, and we need to call them out. I'm sorry. Yeah. I will die on this hill. I mentioned it last week. So don't be shady. And if you don't know if you're illegal or not, it's kind of okay to ask. Like, I found out that I thought that we had the proper permits to have certain things at the university with all the freaking MOUs and emails and conversations. Found out that we might have a couple that we need additional permitting for. I was very upfront. I was like, oh crap, screwed the pooch on that one. I think that was my direct quote. And then how do I make this better? Do you run the risk of them potentially saying, well, you can't have that? Sorry. Yeah, you do. But there's also a pretty good possibility that you're going to be able to keep what you think, you know, and just have the freaking conversation. But I don't like painting with broad brushes. We don't do that here. And I really don't like this whole, like, they're all bad. They're not bad, because that's just as bad as them saying we're all bad. Like, for crying out loud here, you know, we're all kind of in the same mission, hopefully, which is to save some reptiles and amphibians at the end of the day. So communicate and try not to be irate when you're doing it. But most of our listeners kind of ride the lines we do. But that is a very important conversation. And then I'm going to say it one more time. If you in any way normalize poaching, just know we don't need it. I understand that herpetoculture wants to have certain species in herpetoculture, but if it's questionable as to where the animals came from, you are not doing herpetoculture any service of good. If you just turn a blind eye because you want to have X. Just don't work with that species till we have the paperwork or the line of information that lets us know they're legal. Yeah. Okay. And I know people often say, well, what about bearded dragons? That wasn't cool. What was done with bearded dragons? They're a mainstay of pets today. I get it. We have one in my living room. But it's just not cool to be like, it's okay. I don't think that's the way we should be.
Agreed.
So that's it.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Okay.
Good topic.
Cool. All right. Next one. Haha. There's a fun one. So, underrated colubrids. This topic came to be because last time we did overrated colubrids, and everybody took Clint's side, and I got my ass kicked. Because apparently the hognose snake people of the world, of which according to his market update should be thousands of you, no one came to my defense, but the fleet of fleet-footed mountain king snake ninjas that have to defend the glory of the mountain king snake at all points in time. They certainly gave me a rash of crap. So
it's funny because it was like the alternative crowd is like, hell no, they can't, and all of the hognose crowd are like, oh yeah, they are kind of a little over it. I mean,
that's basically what they did. They didn't come to the defense of their snakes in any way. I'm a little salty. You can still do that, by the way, hognose snake people. Just saying. Okay, so rather than get in a situation where we get flamed, we're going to go with things we feel are underrated. So we're talking in praise of snakes, certain snake species.
Yeah, these are going to be colubrids that basically don't get the attention we feel they deserve.
Yes.
They kind of fly under the radar a lot.
In full disclosure, we did a short on this for the Patreon peeps, but we've decided that our answers are going to change. And in Clint's case, it's legitimately changed. I don't know if mine's changed, but I'll change it to a different species.
Yeah, I would say, and I'll go ahead and say it on the short, because that one shouldn't have been a surprise. Garter snakes. You guys hear me talk about that on the market update all the time, that I feel garter snakes are definitely, underappreciated and underrated. But I'm going to narrow that down even tighter at this point. And I want to give another species that I feel are underrated, and I actually get requests for pretty often. And I hear this pronounced both ways, so forgive me if I'm saying either incorrectly. But Dion's rat snakes.
Dion's rat snakes.
Dion's, there you go. So those I feel are greatly underrated. For those who aren't familiar with that species, this is a very small species. I mean, you're looking at like 30 inches, I think, if not smaller, maybe, that come with various localities where you can have, we're talking some deep red, orange, or some more towards yellow. They're kind of
black.
Black, yeah, and I mean they're like garter snake size, but they're more of a rodent eater than what the
Mhm.
garters are. You don't have to have heat. They're an Asian species that room temp, and they're very easy. I mean, in a very cool and pretty snake. So this is one that I think a lot of people don't know about, or they haven't seen the variety and what the adults pop like and all that. But those who do know of them and have experienced them are big fans
Yeah.
of them because of just how easy and cool they are. So that would be a species that I think, if it's more popular in Europe than over here. That's where I'd say that's where all the cool stuff, of this species really is, and so typically whenever I see some of the cool Diones available, it's for importation, from a captive bred, line from Europe. So that's, if I had to say, one species right now, that would be one that definitely should have more attention than what it does here in the U.S.
I'd agree with that. When I had Asian rats, I hunted them down, Dion's rat snakes, and I really liked them. They look. It's funny you brought up garters. To me, their physique looks like you took a rat snake and a garter snake and got it 50-50.
Yeah.
Like if those were capable of producing offspring, it would look like a Dion's rat snake. And I hope I'm not, doing them a disservice. And
No.
I had to get them cold. That's one thing, is like to breed them. Many of them come from, like, there's literally localities in Siberia. So, but if you can get them cold, which isn't that hard if you live in the temperate United States, breeding them is a lot of fun. And they're one of those crazy Asian colubrids that when they lay an egg, the eggs hatch 30 days later.
Yeah, it's real quick. Some of them as quick as
fast.
14 days.
Yes.
Yeah, certain localities, 14 days is the incubation of those eggs because they carry them longer. They hold them longer.
That's an adaptation for, I live where it's cold.
Yeah.
But no, they were fun. Mine were only a pain in the ass acclimating. Like I remember all of them didn't eat for like a month. That's fairly typical. Once they ate, they were bulletproof. And I got rid of, they were the last, I still have my Japanese rat snakes. They're never going anywhere. They're my favorite. But they were the last Asians besides the Japanese rat snakes to go. I held on to them the longest, and then I called Justin Smith, who basically got all my Asians, and was like, okay, you want these? And he gobbled them right up.
No, I don't blame him. They're neat.
All right. So I actually just changed my mind, and I'm glad I did, because I was going to defend Nerodia again. They were in this tank, but I'm actually going to do Japanese rat snakes are my answer. I remember the first time I saw a Japanese rat snake, I was 18, 19 at the All Ohio Reptile Show. And it made me do like a triple take. And this wasn't the locality, Kunashir Island, which are like turquoise, green.
And they're the ones that get all the attention.
Yes.
Is the Kunashir Island. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm talking just a normal Japanese rat, the Leiphe Climacophora. And I did like a quadruple take because I was like, that's a corn snake that's green. Like, what? It's a green corn snake. I knew it wasn't a corn snake, but it reminded me of that. And so I've never figured out why these things aren't way up there. And even for people that keep Asian rat snakes, you don't oftentimes hear about them keeping Japanese rat snakes. So here's why I feel they're underrated. One, size. They get big enough to be a big, like, they're an impressive snake. They max out at about 4 feet. So you've got, if you have a 4x2x2, you can keep an adult pair in there, and they are happy as can be. Feeding, they eat pretty much all the time. They also eat anything. They eat eggs. They eat chickens. They eat rats, mice. They eat crested geckos. I don't know if you all remember the story of when my Japanese rat snake got loose in this office and made its way down through the humidifier hole and screen lid into my crested gecko enclosure and ate the damn cresteds. Like, there you go. They're So they're indiscriminate feeders, which is great for a snake.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just absolutely beautiful. And if you like morphs, there's a granite form, I think. There's an albino form. They're one of the few snakes. There's an island off the coast of Japan, I don't know the name of it, where albino, this is actually, wow, we're just bringing worlds together. Albino snakes got onto the island. Their gene pool got depressed, so they became inbred, but they were able to exist on the island. And I think it's like a fairly large percentage. It's like 33 to 50% of the Japanese rat snakes on the island are albinos. And they're kind of given this mythical cultural significance. Like, you've got that whole history. So if you have an albino, it's a wild occurring albino.
That's neat.
You know what I mean? And then I'll save one aspect as to why I think they're underrated for a question that's coming up. But they're relatively easy to breed if you want like a fun breeding project, and they don't make a lot of babies, so you don't get overwhelmed. Like they lay clutches of like 6 to 9, maybe 10. I've never, some snakes I find when I look in there and see the eggs, I'll fully admit that I'm like, yes, damn, that's a lot of mouths, a little mouth to feed when you see like 30 OBX king eggs. But there's that. And then every Japanese rat snake that is hatched in this house ate a frozen thawed pinky right off the rip. They incredibly easy. The only thing that gets them into trouble, I think, it's the same thing that plagues rat snakes everywhere, is when they're little and they're in a deli cup, they're ass ugly.
Because they haven't gone through their change yet. You're exactly right.
Green. Well, there's like tinge of green.
They're like but it's more of like a poop green. I mean, it's a brownish, greenish mix that just is not pretty as babies at all. It's kind of like a brownish, greenish, grayish. I mean, all that just dingy. And and I think that the mainland, group there really is underrated, because everybody asks, for the locality form, because it has more of that teal coloration. But the mainland is a really pretty green. Whenever it fully grows and pops. So, and their disposition is pretty chill. I mean,
they don't really bite.
Yeah, they're not spastic, to a degree. It's, I think if you've worked with Russian rat snakes by chance, these are very similar in their handleability and, overall demeanor. So I agree with you.
And one final thing, because I've kept a lot of things in naturalistic enclosures, they're extremely interactive. If you put them in a 4x2x2 or an even taller enclosure, or give them space, they use it. And it's kind of nice, because if you put them in like a 6-foot viv, but they're only 4 feet, they'll be zooming around all day. Mine did that a lot. Every now and then I'll give Zeusai some animals, and then I will take them back. And this is my fault. I am claiming responsibility. I told people, the first clutch of Japanese rat snakes I got, I gave 4 to the school. Okay. And I'm a big believer in getting the babies past the baby phase. And so we feed kind of heavy. So I had said, give them a mouse every 4 days. And then I got busy, and I didn't get back to them until about 11 months later, when I was like, where the hell did we get these adult Japanese rat snakes? And the students were like, well, those were the babies. I was like, they're 4 feet now. They were 4 inches, like not even a year ago. They grow fast. I'm not promoting pushing them, but I'm saying it's also a snake that if it's eating, you will see returns. I think a lot of the little colubrids that we get, I like to see, okay, they're growing. And I've noticed with some of the kings, when I got into the kings, really, like they do this weird, they like grow steady for like a year and a half. And then at like 18 months, I look at them and I'm like, you're stunted. Same feeding regime. And then boom, 6 months later, they're an adult king snake. Japanese rat snakes just have like a nice constant growth. So I think they're great for beginners. I think they're the full friggin' package. I don't understand why everybody doesn't talk about them all the time. So there you go. Get yourself a Japanese rat snake.
All right.
Captive bred.
Captive bred, absolutely.
All
right, Max. Hit us with the next one.
Haha.
Cohabitation of colubrids. You know, it's a topic that gets touched on with a decent amount of frequency here on the show, for
Yes.
sure. And often it's not even us bringing it up; it's our guest,
Mm-hmm.
because of how many species that I think have been found to do okay, if not well and or better, when
Well,
housed in a group.
the science, there's a really cool bit of science being done right now that absolutely shows that snakes, they recognize individuals and they display behaviors that are far more associated with stress reduction than stress reducing in the presence of other individuals. I have an undergrad, Morgan, and we were just talking this week about doing a great big cohab study with false water cobras, doing unrelated pairs and related pairs, and seeing what the deal is with falsies. Because I can tell you, I've raised them communally, and when I yanked out one of those individuals and left an individual in the cage, that was the only thing that changed, was the snake was removed. Damn thing didn't eat for like 2 months. I put the snake back in there, they started eating again. Like, I don't know. Are there some species you don't do that with? Yes. But for most, and I believe the specific question was cohabitation of Pantherophis.
That was the initial. Yeah, that's what was asked of us. Yeah.
But I saved another thing for Japanese rat snakes is I keep my pairs together all year long. So I cohab them. And that's part of the fun of keeping them. So I'm
I think
on team cohab unless they eat each other. And then I'm on team
same.
cohab.
Now, I will say this, I think the question was originally posed to us on like kind of what are potentially the drawbacks or something along that. And the only thing I'm going to say when it comes to the two pieces when it comes to cohabbing species that you don't have the fear of them eating each other just because they're hungry. One, it is during feeding time. There's always risk. If you're feeding them in the same cage at the same time, it's okay. That can be a problem. Although we hear the horror stories about, Lady in the Tramping on a rodent and somebody getting eaten, but just know that is so rare. You know what I mean? It is very unlikely. It's possible, not real probable, but it can happen. And if you do have a aggressive feeding species, an aggressive feeding animal, it's more likely to happen. So yes, that's one. The other, and this is really something we haven't talked about this part of it before, that I want to say, if you're going to cohab, because again, if anything, we're proponents of it in most, in many cases. You have to ensure that you've got the cage space.
Yep.
And the cleanliness.
Yep.
To ensure that you're not compounding the amount of bacteria, the amount, the pathogens, the air, the feces, period, in there, because you've got twice the snake now, and I'm not saying if this species does great in a 4x2, two of them may still do fine in a 4x2. So I'm not saying you instantly have to double your cage space or whatever, but you are doubling the amount of feces produced in that cage every week. So there has to be a cleaning regimen that is going to ensure that that's removed, so that you're not putting them in greater danger just of overall health. So they're not necessarily in danger from the other snake. They're just in danger from the little things that could get them if you're going to do it. So.
The other thing is the keeper. I worry sometimes with the cohab conversation that people don't cohab. Then they're like, oh, I can cohab. And then they look at all their resources and think, I could put another snake in every tub and every VIF.
Right. That's not always
the hoarding mentality that I'm not vibing on that. And for the record, we recognize that and we're not promoting that. If you've got, I cohab my false water cobra females. I know some other pretty reputable breeders. We've had conversations. I mean, like, yeah, I do that too. But I do like 2 in an 8 foot long, 3 foot deep, 3 foot tall cage. But I also know I am cleaning out the crap every Monday and Thursday. It is like, that's the only, like, we talk about, oh, don't get regimented with feeding. I'm not regimented with feeding. Like, I don't have a feeding day. I have a de-pooping day, Monday and Thursday. Because they're gonna, that you are asking for forward flies to take over your collection with that amount of feces. So don't just think about it, you know, that's got to be part of the equation, is thinking about, like, do I really need to buy another snake to be thrown into this enclosure? Because it's a very slippery slope. And I will flat out tell you, all things being truthful here, I have gone down that slope and then caught myself and backed way off, you know. Like, I'm currently retracting the collection here because the past 3 years has been a growing year. Figured out what king snakes I like, what king snakes I don't like. And now I've got the infamous, like, empty cage space. I'm moving the cages out. They're leaving the house, and I'm getting bigger cages for what lives here. That's what my response is going to be.
I think that's been something, and not to get away from this, but that's been something that I think both of us have kind of, and I don't want to, for me, anyway, I will say this is, the show's been such a big part of it, but kind of expanded the mindset on how we're keeping and how I personally want to grow as a keeper, you know, and I think that, you know, that's definitely occurred because of so much of the information that, because while we're blessed in the sense of we get to present so much of this information to, you know, to the audience, I hope the audience realizes how much we learn in the process. And from the, you know, it's like I've said, we're not always the experts here putting out the information. We get to ask experts this information. Right. We bring these guests on who are brilliant at what they do. And I mean, we're getting just as much education as anyone else. So, you know, I think that it's definitely grown us both in that regard. So yeah, you know, and to now bring it back, you know, to just cohabitation in general, I will say there are definitely a lot of perks, you know, to it. With Pantherophis specifically, I saw it happen for me this year because, you know, we discussed how it seemed like everything went late. And it's not just here at Metazotics. It's happening, you know, over there with you, Zac. It's happening with other breeders where it's not that things didn't go, just later, you know, we think it's spring. Well, I would probably say because this year we did happen to put most of our Pantherophis together and left them together throughout, you know, this breeding season. And I think if I was pairing and pulling and pairing and pulling every week, like we've always done, I probably would have given up too early in the season thinking, oh, that we must've missed something. This one just ain't going to go or whatever. Yeah.
That's what I do. I mean, some people might think it's insane to keep Getula Kings together for months on end. During the breeding season, that's exactly what I do. It seems like it's that initial contact is where it's going to be bad. And then after that, you know, the way I look at it is this: if they eat each other, they don't make babies and they go extinct. So, you know, I just think it's that initial feeding response reactive thing is where you get into problems. Musaranas, though, I will say, they just want to eat each other.
And seeing Chinese king rats, they're going to be cool for a week. And then she's going to be like, okay. And then boom, that's when you find them trying to eat the male. So yeah, yeah, I'm with you. You know, as far as Getula, it's funny because for me, it just kings in general, California kings are the only ones I've ever worried about. They're the only ones who've ever given me a problem. And it's, you know, with Easterns, like you said, I had one time that it was an attempt and it was more of a mistaken identity. It was movement, you know, but Cal Kings, sometimes you just have that one, you know, that it's like anything you put in there and they're going to go after it. So, but yeah, that's, you know, I think that we have much more success this year on black rat snakes and some other things than we would have because of the shift in the season and the temps and the pressures, because we housed them together, because we were cohabbing. We also, I mean, I've got many greenbush clutches, greenbush rats, Persinum this year, because we've got 3 trios, I think 3 or 4, and we leave the trios together all through fall. You know, I separate them right now just so that we can ensure everybody's getting weighed up, you know,
Mhm.
and all that. But they do great, you know, in my opinion, by cohabbing.
Garter snakes and Nerodia.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I have one Nerodia in here that lives by herself, and she doesn't have the same feeding response or just overt behaviors, and it's only because she's gigantic. But I have 2 exos in here set up for smaller Nerodia. The Clark eye are in here right now, and they're always balled up together. I mean, literally, I've got all those baby red-sided garter snakes are right here, and there is a giant pile of little garter snake heads. So I don't think it's as bad as we think it is. And if you think about what snakes do in nature, most temperate snakes, when they go to hibernate, a den on the landscape is not an easy thing to find. Something where you can get underneath the frost line and hold it about 45 to 50 degrees for 4 months to get through winter. So if they were truly antagonistic, if that evolved in them, you wouldn't see communal denning, and they do communal denning. And so I will say there are some like telltale behaviors I've noticed that let you know, okay, obviously keeping pairs together, if you have something like, I would never keep a pair of false water cobras together. There are people that do that, but the males will just be on the female forever. So, you know, thinking about that. Meanwhile, Chlamydophora, they're all over each other in the springtime, and then like it's just a random day I go down there, male's not interested anymore, and I figure that's the day she ovulated and we're past breeding. So watch the snakes. It's not a one size fits all. And then if you get a bunch of the herky jerky, where you have basically one snake on top of the other and it's kind of doing that erratic head movement, that's classic colubroid dominance, or I don't know what's going on behavior. And a lot of times you'll see that, especially with males that are being kept together.
Yep.
I have 2 male bull snakes that I wanted them to have access to a 6-foot viv. For about 3 days when I put them together, I probed that one snake. It's actually the albino I got from Colubrid Fest, because the other male was just dominant. And I was like, are we sure that's a male? You know what I mean? And sure enough it was. But after 3 days, pecking order was established. Now I open up the tub and they're laying on top of each other. So,
you know, it's funny because I'm going to step out of colubrids for just a second. And I've talked before about the tortoise enclosure that we have, you know, the Hermans out there. Well, we are able to cohab Herman's tortoises and Russian tortoises in that same pen because it is so big. They can get to their different temperature zones that, you know, if they want it. Really, they kind of want the same, honestly. But they've got enough range where, you know, I can do that in that big area. And we'd had Russians in there before. We eventually sold the Russians, so we were just having our breeding group of Hermans, but we had a young adult male Russians surrendered to us. And rather than setting it in something small, you know, it's, you know what, we're going to just let him here. And we had to do the same thing, where it's funny because he's probably, 2 to 3 inches smaller than the Herman's male. But he's got a Russian attitude, I guess, because he's just, he thinks he's a lot bigger. And I mean, he's constantly, for 3 days, they were constantly, you know, pushing and nipping at each other. And we'd let them do it through the day. But when we were leaving at night, we would kind of pin him off. So they could smell each other or whatever, but they couldn't get to each other if no one was here to watch. And, you know, just like what you said with the bulls, where it took 3 days of them getting it out of their system, and now they've kind of established who's who, and there's no more fighting. They're good to go. But that's, you know, something that if it's a species that it's not going to really hurt the other one, then, you know, that's probably kind of part of it. You know, sometimes is they have to establish, you know, especially if one of them was there first, that's probably going to be the one that's, you know, that's their territory and they've got to put the displays. So,
but I've had cohabbing go wrong. I've talked about the pair of rhinos I got, and then I shipped them out to Lucas, and turns out they were 2 males, and males will just rip each other to shreds. So once again, nuance, one size doesn't fit all. Watch your animals, read your animals. Your animals will tell you what to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Do we have another one, or do we do it?
No, I think that was it. I think this is this has been a, nice, fun episode. And,
Yes.
if you're listening to this, on Spotify, I want to say, please give us a rating. That certainly
Yeah,
helps.
do that. We don't ever plug that enough, and we should.
We don't. And, it's,
That
if
like
you,
button.
yeah, that's right. And I want to say thank you so much. If you didn't see the post on Facebook, CCR, the not counting YouTube views, take those out. CCR has now been downloaded over 100,000 times. That's
Big deal.
It's hard to really fathom that, I mean, that's so incredible. So thank you all for that. I'm also going to ask, if you are watching this on YouTube, yes, hit like, hit subscribe, hit all that fun stuff. But if you liked this type of episode, comment, let us know.
Put
leave
in
comments.
there what you want us to talk about.
Yes, I think that's a great. I love going and reading the comments, for right there on YouTube. It helps us, know what we're doing right, what we, are doing wrong. And I love just because so many of you point out something funny or that you liked, in that particular episode. And I love reading that. I think that's so neat. So, again, this is something a little bit different, being that it was just kind of jumped around to different topics that weren't necessarily linked together. If you liked it, let us know. It helps us know that this type of show's got a spot in the, in the rotation. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Okay. And then we don't do it enough, so I'm going to do it now. I want to thank Morelia Python Radio Network for hosting us. I want to thank Eric for putting up with our nagging. And, when we try to make sure these things hit every 2 weeks. Thank you, bud, for all that you do for us and for all the podcasts you oversee. So,
and so you guys know, sometimes that ends up being hey, Eric, we recorded last night. Can you get that up right now?
Yeah, we've done that.
It's so sorry, buddy.
Yeah. It's a real short notice.
Yeah.
We try to get one out every 2 weeks, and it's been a challenge this summer, but we are freaking determined to not miss our every other week schedule. So, okay. Where can people find you at, Clint?
You can find everything that we have available, both animal and supply, at Metazotics.com. And remember, if you are checking out on Metazotics.com, use coupon code CCRadio for 5% off. You can email me at metazotics@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. I'm Clint Bartley, or you can go to the Metazotics Facebook page. And on Instagram, it's MetazoticsLLC.
All right. And you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Crawdad, on Facebook at Zac Loughman. You can also look me up online. If you just type Zac Loughman into the Google, you'll totally find my university page. Write me an email. Had a lot of people email me and request the Mexicana paper, and I got it to most of you. I'm very sorry. I read some of your messages when I was in Iowa, and then I thought I'll get back to that, and then didn't, and now I can't find your emails. So if you want any of the papers, I love sending the papers out. I love helping you find the books. So just message me on Instagram or Facebook. But I am requesting, if you want one of the research articles, the PDFs, send me your email, because I have a folder now that I dump them all into. So it's super easy for me to shoot you a quick email and get that paper out to you. And if you requested it and I didn't get it to you and you've made it this far, please do it again. And I will get you the paper. Okay. Yeah, but emails good as well. And if you're a high school kid, if you're a college student, if you graduated from college and you're looking for graduate school, please always consider my lab at West Liberty University. The Applied Herpetology and Herpetoculture Lab, full-blown thing. Ripping and roaring right now. Can't wait to see where it is a year from now. And so with that, thank you for all your support. Thank you for listening if you made it this far. And be it afternoon, evening, morning, or night, whatever time of day it is, hope you have a good one. Later.